Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Mission of the Church. I'm your host, Rich Peterson, and today I'm here with Pastor Jamie Engram from Desert Springs Community Church in the Phoenix, Arizona area. So before I introduce a little bit Jamie and let him share some of his story, I just wanted to sort of remind us why we think this is an important time for us to gather together. Um, we do a lot of interviews, I suppose, as a missions agency with missionaries and other missions personnel. And we don't really do a lot of conversations with local pastors who are really on the front lines doing the work of mission. The mission of the church is, of course, the mission of Jesus. Jesus has given to us his great commandment, and that is to make disciples of all nations, or to disciple all nations, and to baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and basically to, well, we kind of went in and out there, so I stumbled a little bit. Now you're on my left, you were on my right, so I don't know what that means, Jamie, but it'll work. Anyway, the mission of the church is the mission of Jesus. And if a church isn't doing what Jesus has commanded it to do, we can maybe do a lot of other things that keep us busy, but we're really not engaged in the work that he's called us to be about, which is again to disciple all the nations. So our premise for these times is basically to highlight the work of a local church. In this case, Jamie, it's the church that you've been serving with for a number of years, Desert Springs Community Church, and just to kind of explore with you some of the things that Jesus is having you and your church be on about in the fulfillment of his mission given to that church. So welcome today. We're glad that you're with us. Hope you got a Starbucks coffee and maybe something to eat. And um, yeah, if you get really boring, we can just watch the people behind you go back and
That's right.
forth.
That's right.
So, just don't get really boring and then we'll be all right.
Well, I'll do my best, but I'm happy to be here, and it's a privilege to get to be a part of this conversation. So thanks so much for having me.
So I really want to just sort of start the whole thing off with maybe the most important life-changing, life-transforming decision that you have made, and that is, just your relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ personally. So can you share with us a little bit about how you became a believer and maybe how you made faith your own?
Yeah. So, for me, I got saved really when I was 5 years old. And I know for a lot of people, when they get saved when they're 5 years old, that's like, I don't remember the exact story. For me, I have a very vivid memory of that story because it was during one of the Arizona dust storms that we get out there. We call them haboobs if you've never heard of one. They're kind of wild and lots of dust everywhere, and there's lightning and thunder. I mean, all sorts of wild stuff can go on during that. And even as a 5 year old, I have a very distinct memory of thinking, I'm going to die during this, and I don't know where I would go if I were to die today. And so I knew that my parents knew about this Jesus guy, and I wanted to go talk to them about how I could know for sure that when I died, whether by that dust storm or something later on, if I could that I would go to heaven. And so I went down and talked with them and accepted Christ as my Savior. And I always like to say that, it would be great if at 5 years old, that was the last time I ever thought I was going to die. But I'm a guy that went to college and did a lot of crazy adventures. So, no, that wasn't the last time I thought I was going to die. But I can tell you it was the last time I wasn't sure where I was going to go.
Hmm.
And so, even at that young age, I accepted the Lord and really developed kind of a passion just for following Him, for knowing the Lord. And I'd say it really, of course, in middle school, it took another step forward and kind of having to make some of those decisions. Am I going to follow the world or am I going to follow the Lord? Same thing in college, right? I grew up in a pastor's home. So, first time being away from college and And suddenly now I can do anything I want. I don't have to go to church if I don't want to, all those things. I had to say, okay, is this my faith or is this my parents? And I just knew for me, I wanted to follow the Lord no matter what. And so kept leaning into him. And now I've gotten to work at Desert Springs for 15 years full time this January. So I've been happy to get to do that now as well.
No, that's really good. How, like you moved in your walk with the Lord Jesus, from this personal relationship and then really kind of wanting to give of yourself out of the overflow of that relationship. You have, either chosen or it was chosen for you to become a pastor. Can you tell us a little bit about that process in terms of how you made that decision or how you came to that vocational choice?
Yeah. So my family, I kind of grew up in a family of pastors. My dad's a pastor. My grandfather was a pastor. My other grandfather was a pastor. My uncle was a pastor. And so I grew up around church ministry. And really, for me, it was just kind of, we joke in the Engram family, we're not really good at anything else. This is what we like to do. And so I knew from pretty early on this was something I wanted to pursue, something I wanted to be a part of. Of course, in my mind, it was, pastoral ministry and preaching. The Lord had a different plan for me there, which was a lot of fun. My big joke is that, I told the Lord I would do anything for him in ministry. I'm coming out of college, I'm getting ready to go to seminary. And I just thought, okay, I want to go preach. So I said, God, I'll do anything that you want me to do. Just don't make me do anything with worship or missions. And lo and behold, 15 years later, I stand before you, a worship and missions pastor at my church. So God's got a funny way of kind of working those things around, but I've loved getting to do missions and I've loved getting to do worship. It's been great.
So in that journey, what did inspire you to be engaged in missions? I mean, you're at a high level in terms of your leadership there at the church. You're on the WorldVenture board of directors. So just you've got a heart for mission. What inspired you to all of that?
Yeah, so for me, again, growing up with around a family of pastors, my grandfather especially had always had a huge heart for missions, and so I'd seen it, I'd watched it, I just had kind of thought, and in fact, I even been in high school, I'd gone and done missions trips and all that kind of thing. And I just kind of had thought, that's great. It's just not for me. What ended up changing it for me was I was a college pastor at the church. And at that time, the church was doing missions trips. We would do kind of our middle school would go locally in the state. Our high school would go kind of somewhere in the continental US. And then our college group would go international. So that time we were going to Romania and we were working with church planners out there. It was a great trip, great people we were working with. But at a certain point, it became cost prohibitive for college students to get to go. And so for me, now I'm the college pastor. I'm responsible to kind of figure out what's this trip going to be. And I'm looking around and I kind of went through this journey of we had a missionary reach out and say, hey, anytime you want to come minister with me. He was in Germany. I went and talked to him. That didn't work out. I picked the 1 year as youth guy is getting married. And so, he's got to use all the vacation time for that, which I totally get. And so that didn't work out. And then other places, Czech Republic, closed door, closed door, closed door. And finally, I just felt like the Lord was saying, okay, where would you want to go? And for me, I just knew this back in 2014 or so. I just knew that was Japan. I didn't know anybody in Japan. I had no idea how to do ministry there. So I said, okay, well, if it's God, then God's going to make a way. Let's, put the police out, so to speak. So every conversation like this, I would just kind of start, have the conversation. At some point, I would say, "Hey, do you know anybody in Japan? I'd love to go to Japan. I'd love to serve there." Eventually, got connected to a pastor who had been in Osaka for a couple of years, and then he connected me to a church there in Osaka. And so I reached out to them. I mean, literally a cold call, email out of the blue. I just said, hey, I don't know if you guys would be open to this, I've got a bunch of college kids. We'd love to come do ministry with you. And I assumed I wasn't going to hear anything back from that email. But actually, they wrote back and they said, hey, if you can do Vacation Bible School, we would love to have you come. And so 2015, I went to scout out the location, meet everybody. 2016, we took our first team there. And what God ended up doing was breaking my heart for the people of Japan and globally, really. But going to a place and meeting these people and falling in love with them and just thinking, wow, like what an amazing group of people, and yet they don't know Jesus and they're going to hell. And I'm not okay with that. Like I just whatever I can do to make sure that these people have an opportunity to respond to the gospel, I want to do. And so I told the Lord on that trip, Lord, whatever you want me to do or whatever I can do to be a part of this. If you'll allow me, I want to be a part of it. And so we started going on trips every year. And then, of course, it started with me, but then I'm watching my students who are going on these trips, and God's just changing their life. He's changing their thinking, He's changing their perspective. And I started to see, wow, when people start to see and understand that the story of God is not just between their house and the grocery store and church, that actually God's doing amazing, miraculous, incredible things all over the world all the time. When we're asleep, when we're brushing our teeth, God is doing miracles. That began to really change my view of missions and thinking, wow, this is so much more than I ever imagined. This is actually an opportunity to tell the church the story of a God that's bigger than we could ever imagine. And we can just be in awe of him. It can expand our view of who God is. And so that became just a real burden in my heart, that how are we sharing that story of what God's doing all over the world? And how are we getting people there to experience and see and be a part?
Nice, nice. Hey, I need to remind those of you who are watching that this is not just a two-way conversation between Jamie and myself. We would love your input as well. So if you have a question for Jamie, if you have a question for me, just pop it in the chat, and we'll try to attend to those as they come up, because we want you to be a part of this conversation as well. Kind of hanging out in Starbucks together, right? Over probably hopefully a really good cup of coffee. But so you said you'd been a part of Desert Springs on staff for 15 years. I'm assuming that because your dad was pastor there, you grew up at this church. So this is home church. This is, I mean, you have been a part of this community. You've loved this community. Like they've loved you well. But how is Desert Springs? What are some of the things they're doing, kind of at the local level, in terms of reaching their community? And then how do those things kind of help you move people's attention to an international field?
Yeah. So, yeah, the Desert Springs Church began in 1983. My family came in 1995. We've been there for 31 years now. Um, and really, I think since the time that we got there, and probably at that time, the church was, maybe around 50 people. Today, it's probably closer to 1,800 on a weekend or something like that. But throughout that whole time, really the focus and the intention of the church, which I think is, probably most churches, has just been evangelism and discipleship. How do we continue to push those things forward? And so for us, it's always been kind of very much in that vein of like, what are the ways that we can get out into our community and have an impact and share the gospel? Back when we were first there, of course, evangelism explosion was a big deal. We were doing a lot of EE, a lot of going out, sharing with people visiting at our church, going to parks and taking opportunities to share there. Today, really, I would say that probably that modern version of that for us, we call them Go Nights, first Wednesday of every month as a church. We get together and we go out to the local parks and communities. We take time just to make relationship and to try to share the gospel with those that we meet and interact with. We're going to talk about at some point, I think, our SMI program, our student missions that we do. That's a big piece of what they do for their training, is going out to the park and sharing with their friends. schoolmates and different people that they see at the park, taking opportunities to have gospel conversations. On Thursday nights, we have our care ministries, which is another way that we like to reach out to our community for different things that are going on. And truthfully, as we continue on as well, I think in the future, we're kind of looking at kind of bringing the global mission stuff into the local. I think we have a vision and a passion that I'm hoping is going to come to fruition to see our church reaching out to local international communities. If you know anything about Arizona, and semiconductor chips. Arizona is kind of a hotspot right now for seeing new semiconductor chip plants come in. So, kind of 30, 40 minutes down the road from us, the TSMC Taiwan Semiconductor Company is putting in a new plant. We're seeing people coming over from Taiwan into our community. And we're hoping that as a church, that's going to be a great opportunity for us to reach out to them as they come over and as they're immigrating to the U.S. to say, hey, you want relationship? We'd love to have relationship with you. And then building in opportunities to reach out to them and hopefully to share the gospel. So, yeah, that's at least a little bit of a taste. I know if Sean, our evangelism director, was here, he'd be going, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. But, we have a lot of great programs that way.
But at the heart of it is evangelism, discipleship.
Absolutely.
Those encounters on Wednesday, do they include entire families? Are you engaging the children all the way up through whoever can, still, I guess, mobily get around? And
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it's middle school on up. Usually, just going to the parks, talking to adults. Usually, kids tend to kind of go, "Oh, playground equipment, I'm gone," that kind of thing. But certainly, looking at kids and talking through, in our kids programs as well, talking through with them how to share their faith. In fact, we were passing around kids booklets the other night, kind of looking through that stuff. So, um, you know, I would definitely say that our kids programs is something we care about their ability to share their faith as well. But yeah, specifically with Go Nights, middle school kind of on up, doing those kind of things.
but but a pipeline of really engaging the people in this important arena of evangelism, part
Yes.
of their discipleship, sharing their faith.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no age, once you've accepted Christ, there's no reason why you can't tell people the hope that you have in Jesus. And so wanting to see them do that and looking for opportunities. And yeah, it's incredible sometimes. And I know for people in different churches and missionaries around the world, you've seen this, right? When sometimes it's the faith of a child that really is the most impactful for a parent or a loved one to see and to kind of go, okay, this is something I need to consider as well.
Absolutely. Hey, go back, just you made a comment about the movement of people from Taiwan into your arena.
Mhm.
We often, in the world of mission, think, well, we've got to always be going from where we are. It's kind of that old concept of from the West to the rest. But the better way of looking at missions these days is, from everywhere to everywhere.
Right.
And you've got a group of potentially unreached people in literally your backyard. I know this wasn't maybe part of our question thing, but it's an important thing because a lot of churches are doing some amazing local ministries, but maybe just a slight refocus to
Mhm.
where they see that they actually indeed have unreached people groups in their backyard. How did, I mean, you're pretty aware of all of those things, but how are you making your people more aware and then engaging them in that kind of diaspora ministry right in your backyard?
Yeah. Well, I think, it kind of comes down to at some point, like I get to be the mouthpiece for it. And so when I have opportunity, that's something that I want to make sure that I'm talking about and that I'm letting people know. I'm blessed in the sense that I do get to get up and speak and have the pulpit, and it's not that that's my personal soapbox time for missions, but I'm the missions guy. So when I'm writing illustrations or I'm thinking about things, this is naturally what comes to my mind and the things that I relate to, and trying to just help people kind of look a little bit beyond where they are, right? Because I think for a lot of people and folks in churches, it's easy, it's natural for us to kind of see the things that are in front of us become the world that we know. And so helping them go, if you could go even 15 minutes beyond that world, really, there's actually huge outreach opportunities. For us, really, Taiwan was born out of Japan because Japan is a place we're still going to. My passion and vision is that we would expand what we're doing in Japan. But because of the nature of doing ministry in Japan, there's really only so many people we can take every year. And I'm sitting there as the missions guy going, it's not enough. I want everybody to know about this. How do we get this figured out? And so we started asking the question, like, are there Japanese people in our community here in Arizona that we could do ministry with? And ultimately, that led us to meeting the missionary that we're out here in San Diego working with today, which is a Japanese national who's ministering to the Japanese here in San Diego. And I'm going, that's only 5 hours away. I can load up handfuls of people and bring them over to do ministry with Pastor K that maybe wouldn't be able to or wouldn't be physically able to go do ministry with us in Japan. Let's do it. Let's figure out a way to make this work. And of course, his passion is similarly evangelism and discipleship. It's a perfect fit. So we started there, and then we're going, okay, what about in Arizona? And so we've been looking, and we're still looking for Japanese communities that we could potentially partner with in Phoenix. But in the process of that, well, here comes Taiwan. And I'm going, hey, if somebody's living, in Surprise, which is 20 minutes from our church, they're probably only 15 minutes from where the most of these communities working at the plant are. Well, 15 minutes, who can't drive 15 minutes? I mean, this would be incredible. And so we just started that process and that journey. And God's actually brought to us, which we're very thankful for, a missionary couple that has a passion for these folks that are emigrating from Taiwan and China to come work at the TSMC plant. And so they were in pastoral ministry and have just decided, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to minister to these folks. And so they just started doing it. And in the process of that, we're trying to come alongside them and say, how could we partner with you? And how could we be a part of what you're doing? So God's even kind of provided that I'm not having to build a whole program. He's brought people to come alongside, which is amazing. And so, yeah, I'd say, an encouragement for any churches out there, it's looking for the people groups, but also who's already doing ministry with those people groups that you can come alongside and learn from. Because a lot of times they've already made some of the mistakes. They've already know the people a little bit. They can give us some advice on that. And so it can be a real blessing to kind of come alongside, partner, and learn from others that are already in the ministry.
That's fabulous. We as churches tend to be accused of not doing that very well. We kind of have our own thing, and we like our own thing, and we protect our own thing. Is it mostly through just a posture or attitude of partnership that you've been able to move people in that direction to better align themselves with and learn from? I mean, that requires humility to learn from anyone. um, that's fabulous.
Yeah, I think for us, it really was a perspective shift that probably happened maybe 10 years ago or so. We maybe even before that, we had a big heart for our church has been church plantings. And so we've been trying to plant churches and get them, and we're actually planting a lot of them in the West Valley of Phoenix, kind of where we are. And different things. And at a certain point, we kind of started looking at the demographics of our community, and we began to understand if you took our church, you took the other big churches in the area, you took every church that's in the West Valley of Phoenix, and we're sometimes churches are you're trying to fight for who's in your seats and how you're who's doing the best ministry program, or people are coming over and going, I like what you do, but I don't like what they do, or why do you do it this way? These other churches do it so much better than you. There's all this weird, kind of comparison. But we were looking at the demographics of our community and going, if you took everybody that comes to church on a regular basis in our community versus the total population, it is a shockingly small number of people in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States, they're going to church on a regular basis. And so the shift was, we don't have time to compare or to try to just everybody's got to do your own thing. We can't work together. If we don't work together, this ain't going to be happening in 50 years. We've got to work together as the churches who are trying to get the gospel of Jesus Christ out. And so we really began to kind of shift our perspective at that point of going, we got to make sure that we're trying to work together, support and encourage other ministries, other churches, so that the gospel is going forward. Because ultimately, that's what matters. And if they're getting discipled at one church that's doing a great work in ministry a different way from us, great. And if they're getting discipled at our church, that's great too. Just as long
Uh,
as it's going forward.
Fabulous, fabulous. So you talked about having a platform, you preach a little bit and that kind of thing, but I understand you guys have like 3 different podcasts that are happening at Desert Springs. Can you tell us a little bit about those and as people would tune into it, what they could expect to learn and hear and how they could grow through that?
Yeah, so the genesis of our podcast programming was our worship department was trying to put together a bunch of video testimonies. Again, I kind of got really into this let's just tell the story idea. And so we were trying to let's tell the story. We want to know the stories of how people in our church have come to faith. Let's try to uncover some of the things that God's been doing in their life, and let's just bless the church with it. We tried to do it for some different things. What we kind of kept coming back to was trying to get people to go on camera like this. We were having a really hard time. But for whatever reason, if you couldn't see their face and it was just going to be audio, they were completely open to it. And so uh, we started, and it wasn't me; it was someone on my team. Her name's Sarah Shallow. She does an amazing job. She's our digital media person. And so she said, I'm going to start a podcast. And God's really just blessed it. The first one out the door was called The Stories Collective, which is just what I was talking about. It's sharing stories of people in our church, letting people in on their faith journey, and just kind of bringing it back to like, what's God doing and being an encouragement to the church. And lo and behold, started sharing those stories, and there's some incredible things that you just would never know about the person sitting next to you in the church, that God had brought them through, and different challenges and different things that they had to walk through. And we started having people just kind of coming out of the woodwork saying, I thank you so much for this. This is so encouraging. I'm going through something like this. Thank you so much for sharing. God's really just, helping grow me and my faith. I mean, almost kind of like, Joshua 4, right? Like the stones of remembrance and remembering God's faithfulness. When we tell the stories and share the stories of God's faithfulness, God does amazing things through that. And so that really was the heart of that podcast. It's on a slight hiatus right now. Sarah just had her first baby, which we're very excited for her. But I believe at some point they're wanting to bring it back. The Now Life podcast was the next one, I believe, out the door, and that really is from our evangelism pastor. Very keyed in on how do we live a missional lifestyle so we can tell the world about the hope that we have in Jesus. And then the last one is called The Resident Strangers. And that's really a theology podcast. And Pastor Steve, our senior pastor, and Rich Holland, who is a philosophy professor at Grand Canyon University, co host that one along with Sarah. And basically, I mean, kind of the same deal. We're looking at and I don't know everybody's experience. I'll just talk for Phoenix, Arizona, but we're seeing fewer and fewer people going to Bible college, wanting to get theological education. And so, therefore, we're seeing fewer people in the church that have a deep understanding of what theology is. In fact, we're a community church with conservative Baptist roots, but we see a lot of people coming into our church from all sorts of different theological backgrounds. And it's not necessarily that they're saying I know exactly what I believe and this is why. It's just the churches that they've gone to. And so trying to kind of give a space where, hey, let's think through some of these issues, and maybe you agree or disagree with us, but let's have a space for the conversation. And so that podcast really covers all sorts of different theological topics. I think they just hit 100 episodes in. The pitch that Steve always likes to give for it when he gives it from the stage is that it's a drive time podcast. They try to keep them to about 20 minutes or so. So you're kind of introducing a topic, but maybe not hitting all the way through. And they recently just converted it to a video podcast because we found for a lot of our small groups, our we call them our connect groups, they actually like to use those video podcasts as a kind of resource for facilitating their groups. So they'll watch a video together and then they'll talk about it and have agreement or disagreement and all that stuff. And so it's been a really beneficial podcast for our church. Not to mention, if I'm doing a message and I'm trying to go, okay, what do I, what's this really obscure theological thing? I can at least go look and I have a resource where I know I can be on the same page with Pastor Steve without having to go look it up. So, or ask him. So that's nice to have.
You could ask him around Sunday dinner, probably, since you're related. But for the rest of us, our messaging team, they're really good. So in the chat, there's actually the link that everyone can go to check out those 3 different podcasts. So those are some like really great resources coming from a local church to a broader people of God. So if you missed that in the chat, just go back. You can just hit that link and it'll take you right to those podcasts. So that's great. Our communications team does all these things in the background, not literally in the background, but somewhere out there in cyberspace. But
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
supporting missions is like it's a kind of a broad statement, but what are some of the things that you at Desert Springs are doing in support of basically specifically global or international missions?
So historically, our church has been a primarily roster care based church, and what I mean by that is that we've really wanted to be a church that cared well for our missionaries. We have a large roster of missionaries at our church, and that was kind of our primary focus. And so we've tried to do that to the best of our ability, really for most of the 30 years that we've been here. Probably trying to think what year it was. It was my grandfather, actually, after he retired from full time pastoral ministry, he came over to our church and really started to beef up our missions program in a part time role. And he has just always had an incredible passion for missions and loved going and traveling overseas and being a part of what missionaries are doing all over the world. And so he brought this incredible passion to our church and began to kind of really expand our view of what our roster could look like. Yeah, probably when I took over, I think we had about 45 missionaries that we supported as a church. Currently, we have about 70, 67, I think is the actual number, which is a lot, but our church just absolutely loves it. And so they absolutely love the number of missionaries we have. We have them getting up and speaking in the service, typically about once a month, different things, missions related, we're talking about in the services. Actually, probably the biggest thing that we do that gets talked about all the time whenever a missionary comes in, and this was not started by anybody with the last name Ingram. It was a lady in our church probably 20 something years ago. Came up to Steve after a service and just said, "Hey, I think it would be amazing if we wrote letters to our missionaries." And as Steve likes to tell the story, he kind of sat there and went, "Okay, well, we can do this for a few weeks till everybody realizes it doesn't work, and then we'll move on to trying to do something else." But it actually ended up becoming probably one of the biggest things that we do in missionary care at our church. And our people absolutely love it. So we have a big wall kind of right in our foyer, prominently displayed with little cards for every missionary that we have. They all look like little postcards. And if you take one out, you can kind of see the region they're in, but you take one out, you got the name and the picture for the missionary. And then on the back, is a pre-stamped envelope and a little card, and you just write them a note of encouragement. And yeah, every time we have missionaries come in, they bring that up and go, just God at the right time, He brought in a bunch of notes from your church, and just knew I was going to be discouraged, and God just really blessed me with what your church said. So that's kind of been our historical missions emphasis. We're blessed in that we do have a lot of different ministries at our church that are really missions passionate and missions focused. Again, it's been a part of our church's DNA for a long time. And so, the guy that runs our 50 plus ministry, is really missions passionate. So they're always wanting to try to get missions stuff coordinated with their events. So we're promoting missionaries at every, 50 years old and above event that we have at our church. And our prayer director is somebody who loves missions, and so she's actually reaching out on her own to get prayer requests from our missionaries that she's putting in our daily prayer updates. And our kids pastor is somebody that has a huge heart and passion for missions because his grandparents were missionaries, and so our kids program is highlighting missionaries at different times, and so we have a lot of support in that way, which has been great. As we look to the future, really my vision of how I want to see this expand is just like I was saying before. I want people to actually get to go and see, and so we're really working right now to kind of expand our short-term trip focus. And as a church, we're starting to begin to think about how, as a church, are we not just coming around and supporting missionaries, but we want to be a church that raises people up and sends them out to the field. And so, how do we become a sending church? And so, those are some of the big things coming down the pipe that we're really excited about when it comes to missions at Desert Springs.
Sweet. And that kind of is great segue into like your high school mission trip training program. So cool because, a lot of times Jesus just sort of enters into our hearts in an extraordinary way. I think my call to ministry came when I was 16. I was just, wide open to here I am, send me, and, that youthful enthusiasm to go wherever God wanted me to go. But tell us a little bit about that high school. It's a mission trip training program. What does that look like?
Yeah, so going back to DNA, when we first came, I mean, we kind of brought my dad. It's like, we're going to do evangelism explosion. We're going to do, we call it SMI, Student Missionary Internship. It was something that he had done at Palmcroft, the previous church, and then even all the way back to when he was in Ohio. It was something that they had seen, but he had just seen the impact of it. And basically, what Student Missionary Internship is, it is a 4 month training for high school students that they go through that gets them ready for a 1 week missions trip where they're going to go out and share the gospel. And at least when we initially started in a rural community, and going and partnering with different churches that couldn't put on a vacation Bible school, or maybe that just don't have, or maybe it's even a community that doesn't have a church in it. And we're going to go and we're going to put on a vacation Bible school, and we're going to take opportunities to share our faith with others. And so, that part is great, and the kids love getting to do that part. But the part for us that we always get excited about is really that 4 months of training, because throughout it, we're teaching them the basic disciplines of the Christian faith. And so we're helping them to learn, how do you get in the Word every day? What does it look like to memorize Scripture? How do you share your faith? We're walking through how to do evangelism. We're giving them opportunities on things like Go Nights to share their faith. How do you put together vacation Bible school programming? So it's just kind of step by step, walking them through that, giving them regular training and accountability to begin developing some of these spiritual disciplines in their life. And so, we used to kind of relate it in some ways a little bit to the Nazarite vow, because there usually is some kind of a giving up that goes with it too. Like, we're not, listening to secular music, or we're not watching, rated R movies or whatever. There's some kind of guidelines to it that they're giving us, saying the students are actually setting themselves aside for this time to grow and to train. And so, yes, for me, that was such an impactful and incredible experience in my high school and actually middle school at that time. We were doing it for that as well, years. Getting to go and see what God was doing on the mission field, but then also having this training that was helping me begin to grow deeper and deeper in my love for the Lord. And it's actually through SMI that I spent my first summer getting to do missions work, because I got connected with the missionary we were serving with. And they said, hey, why don't you just stick around after the team leaves and you can come do ministry with us for the summer? And I did. So it's been an incredible and impactful program for our students, giving them a taste of ministry and helping them to kind of grow and develop in those spiritual disciplines. And so, actually, now part of the challenge that I kind of have is trying to help make sure that they understand, hey, when you're doing this, you're actually getting to experience missions. because it's so ingrained in the DNA of and culture of our church that I think it almost just comes across as like this is what we do, not like, hey, this is kind of like those people that stand up on the stage. And so we're starting to have those conversations too, and encouraging students to go, hey, maybe there's a next step here. If you love this, why not think about doing something a little bit more and just see what God will do with it in your life?
Mhm. So you talked about, missions just being a part of the DNA of Desert Springs. How and why is missions so important to you guys?
Oh, well, again, I think a lot of it probably goes back to my grandfather and all those years. So he got connected with an organization called International Needs. I want to say in the 1950s. I could be wrong, but I think that was how long ago it was. And he's kind of similar to me. He got traveling all over the world, seeing what God was doing, seeing how God was changing lives through church planners and pastors and missionaries all over the world, and he just became a passion for him. And so he brought that DNA really with him to all the different churches that he was a part of from the very beginning. So he told his churches when he would go and he'd get the call from them to go, he said, "Hey, I'm happy and excited to be your pastor, but I just need you to know, 8 to 10 weeks out of the year, I am your ambassador that's going to the mission field, and I'm going to be serving alongside these missionaries and these church planners and church leaders in other countries. And you're going to have to know that and be good with that. And I'm going to come back and tell the stories, and it's going to bless our church, and they're going to be passionate about this." In fact, the last church that he served at, Palmcroft Church over here in the West Valley of Phoenix, in the last years he was there, they were given $1 million to missions. That was their big campaign because they were just a church that was all about what God was doing globally. And so, I think he always carried the perspective with him that churches that give to missions and support missions are churches that are blessed by the Lord. And so he almost, yeah, I mean, we almost think about it like it's the church's tithe, right? Like we want to be giving money to missions, we want to be giving time to missions, we want to be supporting the global work of what God is doing. And so as God blesses the church, then we want to make sure we're doing more with global missions and being a part of what God's doing all over the world. And so that DNA is really just carried through with my dad, with myself, and then of course, as a lot of you all know, when you see your church getting excited and passionate about what God's doing globally, it kind of just snowballs. And it's really exciting to get to see people get fired up about what God's doing all over the world.
Yeah. I think somebody last week I was in a conference, they referred to it as Godonomics. That in God's economy, basically, the more we're giving away, the more that He can give back to us. And so, a lot
Mhm.
of churches get really frightened with regard to limited resources. Every organization has limited resources, but where are you investing those resources? And $1 million, that just seems like such a huge sort of thing. But your story just emphasizes the fact that you cannot outgive God, that his economy is so different than maybe the way that we look at it in the Western world. So, what are some things you're doing to get the church excited about missions, either local, international? Just that's kind of one of those things that as missions pastor, you're kind of trying to light a fire underneath people. And how are you getting people excited about it?
Well, like you said, we're just a church trying to do our best. I'm sure there's probably some great ways we haven't thought of. Truthfully, again, I kind of always just come back to telling the story because that tends to be the thing that people latch onto. And in fact, I had kind of one of those, I think, God ordained moments of clarity. We have a rather, a decent size at least missions team that kind of helps facilitate all the stuff that we do. And we were having interviews with them and talking through some different things. I started to notice this pattern and trend, which was that almost everyone who was passionate enough about missions to be on our missions team only had maybe one significant missions encounter in their life that God had used to just catch hold of their heart. It wasn't like oh, I just was in a church and there were 16 different things. And then because there was so much, then I was like, missions is good and I want to be part of it. It was typically like my neighbor was a missionary. I heard the story of what God was doing from them, and I just couldn't let it go. It just was amazing to me. And I just became very passionate about missions, or I supported a compassion child, or I went on a short-term trip and I saw what God was doing in Haiti. And I knew I had to be a part of that. And um, you know so that really kind of clarified for me is like part of what I want to make sure I'm doing as a missions pastor is I'm just sharing the stories. I get these newsletters all the time with incredible stories of what God's doing, and I don't have a way to just go to the church and go, hey everybody, here's this incredible story, make sure you catch how incredible this is. uh, that I can just send out 100 of those a year. I can't do it, but I can when I have opportunity from the stage or when I have opportunity to talk to people. I can share as much or as little as I want. Well, okay, not on the stage. I only got 5 minutes, but like, I can share a story, or when I'm talking to somebody, I can tell them as much as I want to tell them. And so I really tried to just become an advocate for the stories of what God's doing globally. And if something touches my heart, I try to make sure I'm sharing that with other people, because as they hear those stories, God can use it and impact their heart. And then as they get connected, like that letter writing thing, a crazy thing is that sometimes those missionaries even write back and they start developing a relationship with the missionaries. And all of a sudden, they're passionate about missions. And so, even to the point where I think at this point for our church, we support a lot of missionaries, but kind of our goal, if somebody's getting up on stage, is that we're taking ourselves out of the equation, if that makes sense with a church member. So we're putting a QR code up on the screen while they're talking. And if our church wants to, take a picture of that, it's going to take them to the missionaries' Facebook page, or it's going to put them on their newsletter, so that essentially they don't need the church now to come up to them and go, here's the story, you got to hear it. But now they're getting it directly. And my passion and belief is that if people can get connected to the story of missions, as God is doing incredible things all over the world, eventually those people are going to want to do more than just be a part of that story. They're going to want to go and see, or they're going to want to give, or I mean, frankly, and we all need this, maybe they're just going to become the biggest prayer warrior in our church for that ministry. And how amazing would that be if just from somebody being up on stage for 5 minutes and they took a picture of a QR code, God used it to make them a prayer warrior for that missionary. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the way that we do it, is honestly by trying to keep as much exposure out there as we can, and then eventually trying to get out of the way and just let them be directly connected to the missionary.
Hmm. So you got, I mean, this incredible discipleship making church that, you're engaging your kids, making them aware of sharing their faith and looking to the world. And then you're offering short-term mission trips, and you have a program for high schoolers, and you kind of have this DNA of mission. So I'm a part of Desert Springs, and I really feel the tap of the Holy Spirit on my shoulder to say, I really feel like I need to invest my life and my life's energy into international missions. How do I go about that through Desert Springs? Where does that start? What does that look like, moving from that conversation with you as a pastor?
Yes, so I love that you're asking this, because this is right in the middle of where we are at and developing. We've had people come out of our church before, but typically the way that it happens is they'll come up and they'll go, "We want to be a part of missions." And we go, "Great, let's help you get there." And then we're just kind of supporting them as they're running along and helping them. We're trying to become more intentional about that. And so that's been something that we've been working hard on, is what is our sending pipeline, and how do we view people and kind of think, okay, if somebody's missionally, aware, they're coming to our church, they're seeing something. Well, at what point do they move to missionally curious? And then maybe they're even like interested. And then at what point is that, how do we help them get to be pursuing and then ultimately sent? And so, yeah, for us, I think we have a lot of people that are really maybe even in that curious, like they're taking it kind of beyond just aware. They're writing letters, or they're going on trips. And so, really, that initial piece for us right now, what we're trying to work on, and again, in process, I think we have a lot to learn in this area, is how are we challenging or encouraging people to think about their next steps? And, not just, hey, I went on this great trip to Japan or I went to Nicaragua and it was awesome, but actually like, well, okay, I love that. Should I be thinking more about this? And, once they get past that point, well, what's next? Right. And so, as we're processing through it, we're trying to kind of figure out like, do we have an evaluation tool that's going to kind of help them assess uh, their temperament for viability and missions? It takes a certain, grit and character to be able to do some of the things that missionaries do. Is this something to be a good fit for them? Are they going to be a good fit for a team? What organizations like WorldVenture do we have that we can connect them with where they go on a short-term trip? WorldVenture has an incredible short-term component, getting people out there and getting to see what God's doing in our different teams all over the world. Going on, whether it's a vision trip or even just like, I think I want to do more type trip. It's an incredible way for people to kind of figure out, like, is this something that really is for me? And then once they get to that point, yeah, helping them to make a wise decision on what organization they might partner with, what's going to be a good fit for them. There's some great tools out there. Of course, I have a bit of a bias towards World Venture. I am not going to pretend I don't. I definitely do. But trying to help them think through what's going to be the best fit for me and then supporting them through that process as best we can. So, yeah, to be honest, that's one that I am excited to see how God's going to grow us in over the next few years. As we're trying to get people missionally excited, to be honest, this last December, I just took a bunch of kids to Urbana with that exact thing in mind. I'm like, what can I do to get you guys here? We're going to do whatever we have to do because I know you guys have a passion for missions. And I just want to see if God will spark something in you. And then we'll walk alongside you in that.
No, fantastic. Yeah, we do know that you are highly engaged in the work here at WorldVenture as a board member. What's the most exciting thing about being a board member of uh, any, I suppose anything, but for you specifically, WorldVenture?
For me, coming to this, it was really exciting because I had always kind of sat in either that church side of missions, of relating to missionaries that way and to missional things that way, or my grandparents were missionaries with World Venture actually in the Philippines, and so I had that missionary perspective a little bit, but now coming to it with that organizational perspective and how does an organization process through these things and think through that, it's been really great, and it's been an opportunity for me to learn and grow, and hopefully to bring some passion and encouragement about what God's doing in young people all over the world. Because I really do think that God is still working and moving and empowering young people to get out and to go and to serve Him overseas, even though. We're seeing some of the same things in missions that we're seeing in church, right? But that's not to say that there's not people coming up in the church that want and have a passion to serve in church ministry. Well, we certainly have that in missions as well. By far and away, the thing that I love the most about getting to be a World Venture board member has been the relationships with the people at World Venture and getting to hear and to know the stories of what God's doing all over the world. Again, I've said it probably 18 times by now, but that's just what I love about missions. I love getting to see what God's doing. Love getting to hear the incredible things that God's doing all over the world. And you know, we live in a world that is dynamic, and there has been good things that have happened in the past 5 years in our global scene, and there has been some really difficult things that have happened. And watching our missionaries as they process through those things, and praying for them when they're going through hurts and pain and loss, and getting to just be a prayer warrior for them in that moment has been something I've been thankful to get to do. But also getting to see God growing and blossoming ministries in places that you wouldn't expect. You talk about Japan, and I am just so encouraged, when I get to go and visit with our missionaries in Japan and seeing what God's doing again in a place that's less than 1% Christian, but that I'm praying there's going to be a great awakening of faith one of these days. And watching and seeing as God's moving people to that place and seeing as God's changing lives through the work and ministry of not just what our missionaries are doing, but what churches are doing all over that country. And I just believe God's preparing a place like Japan for some incredible things. And it's exciting to me to get to be a part of that and trying to help make sure that this organization is sustainable and able to support the work that God is doing in Japan and all over the world, because there are incredible things happening all over the world through World Venture, Indonesia, Spain, the Philippines. I mean, all sorts of places, and some I can't name here. So God's just doing some incredible stuff. So I love dreaming and thinking about what God might do with World Venture in the future. Again, it's a passion thing for me. So I don't want to get too into it because we only have a certain amount of time left. But I think God's just leading this organization in some really exciting directions, and I'm very excited to see where we'll go.
Yep, I love our organization, and I've said to friends and family that I would be a much better missions pastor if I returned to the local church after serving with World Venture just a short
Mm,
time than I ever was before. I've learned so much.
yeah.
But you're right, our time is kind of drawing to a close. We know the importance of prayer. And you have indicated, the fact that God really will move when his people pray. So just maybe a couple things, Jamie, that we can be in prayer about for you, for Desert Springs, just in the last probably 3 or 4 minutes that we have together.
Yeah, I would just say prayer for God's wisdom and leading for our church, specifically with as we're trying to build out our short term and our sending pipeline and trying to adapt kind of our missionary care and all those pieces. We're kind of coming into what I would call a new normal of missions at our church. And so as we start to kind of build into those things, I've kind of learned this about myself. I love to build ministry. It's very exciting, but it can also be, stressful as we're trying to put things together. And so, just for wisdom from the Lord, if you didn't catch on from talking about my family history with missions, I have a real hard time even just kind of knowing this isn't something we should probably not do at this point, or this is that right next step, because I just want to do it all. It all sounds amazing. I love it, and so I really have to rely on the Lord to kind of make it clear of going, hey, let's take this step, maybe this one's down the road or something else. But we just love missions. And so trying to do that wisely, but trying to build our program as best we can. So prayers for wisdom for that. And say on a personal level, I would always appreciate prayer just for my family as we kind of adjust to that new normal, because there's a lot more travel in my life now than there used to be. I have young kids. My oldest is just turned 12, and the youngest is 5, going to turn 6 here in May. And so there's a certain number of weeks I can be gone a year before it becomes a problem. And we're still kind of finding that water level. And I've got to be very present when I'm home. And so no matter the jet lag, trying to be present and kind and gracious with my family when I'm home, but also trying to find that water level of what's best for them, where we're serving them as well as we can. And hoping one of these days we're going to start getting my kids on these trips so they can come with me, and then maybe it's a little different. But
Won't be
looking
too
forward to that.
long.
Yep.
Won't be too long. Hey, thank you so much for spending some of your incredibly precious time with us, Jamie, and just the insights that you provided, the things that you've said, the suggestions that almost any and every church could, probably avail themselves to. So let me just close in prayer as we pray for some of those specific things for you. So, God, we are so grateful for the work that we get to be a part of through our life transformation with you, Jesus. We thank you, God, that you have called us and that you have given us a sense of purpose, that you have promised that you will go with us and you'll be with us to the very end. So, Lord, I pray for my brother Jamie, and I pray that you would give to him and the team that he works with and the church that he ministers alongside the wisdom to know exactly what you are on about with regard to how they can best achieve the mission of Jesus within the church at Desert Springs. I pray, Lord, for Jamie as he balances work and ministry and travel and family. I pray, Lord, that you would give him a sense of of true significance in balancing all of those things, and knowing, Lord, that the work that you've called us to is an invitation to be a part of something that you engage us in, but we can't just wear ourselves out doing a work that really is yours to do in and through us. So give him strength, give him patience, give him vision, give him wisdom as he pursues those things that you're calling him to. And Lord, thank you for his service to WorldVenture as a member of the board. We thank you for the day, and we pray for all those who have engaged in our conversation with us, that Lord, you would bless them and that you would enrich them dearly. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at the next go of Mission of the Church.